Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Gut Wrench Podcast. I'm your host, and I will be your host for this day. My name is Mocha. It's not my actual name, but just roll with it for a second. And would you looky what I've got here? It appears that on the iTunes sports ranked categories, sports wrestling categories, emails, and updates for the latest rankings and reviews, latest top rankings, I have been ranked. I should say, we have been ranked number 213 in the sports category. Now, I'm not really sure whether or not I'm 213 out of 500, out of 700, because they don't give me that sort of information. They don't exactly tell me what it is that I'm ranked for. However, I'm going to take it upon myself. Hang on one second. To make that ranking go up by any means necessary. Any means, including foul. Any foul things that I have to do in order to get this ranking to go up, in order to become number one. Now, most of those foul things may or may not include discrimination and calling all the punches and calling it straight down the middle and giving to charity and showing up to events, like charitable events and stuff of that nature. But we are ranked 213. Now, last week, I'm not really sure how this works. It says that I started at 144, and then I went down 27 spots, and now I'm at 171, and then I went down 42 spots, and now I'm at 213. So for 3 weeks they've been ranking me, is what it looks like, and where I have one episode a week, I guess it's, I'm not really sure how my episode popularity could go down unless there has to be something that really fiddles with that. I don't exactly know how they would rank me and then decide not to rank me, or to rank me down rather. But on this day we will be looking at AEW and talking a little bit more about them, as well as looking at a WWE pay-per-view from 2019. Because you, the fans, believe it or not, voted for it. I put a poll up on Twitter, and I didn't mean for it to only be a day long, but it's okay. It's fine. And it was 50-50 split between two events. NXT TakeOver Toronto 26 or NXT TakeOver Toronto. Okay, allow me to say that again. NXT TakeOver Toronto 2019, which they kept calling NXT TakeOver 26, or NXT Toronto the first time that they went to Toronto, which I'm not really sure which number as far as TakeOver NXTs that one would be. Anyway, What we're going to go ahead and do is look at NXT TakeOver 26, but not yet. Because that one has 2 5-star matches on it, I'm going to go ahead and look at AEW first. Because unfortunately, I hate to spoil this for you, but AEW doesn't have any 5-star matches that I was able to pull from the AEW Dark event from this past week in Charleston. Yes, that is Charleston, West Virginia. Not Charleston, South Carolina, not Charleston, Dakota, and I'm not sure what there is a Charleston, Dakota. I don't know if there's a Charleston, Wisconsin, but I've been told that there is. And there's a Charleston, South Carolina. South Carolina. So, even though I got it written down as though, like, the format for my notes is... Okay, sorry about that. The format for my notes is a little bit wonky because I have the AEW, or I have the WWE event put on here first. So instead of doing that one first, because it, like I said, it's kind of like I'm making you wait for the main event. And the reason that I had to look at NXT, holy crap, the reason that I had to look at AEW is because I thought that the NXT TakeOver event, being a 3-hour event, would have more things to look at. So I figure instead of trying to stretch the amount of time that I talk about one match on one wrestling event, I figure instead of doing my audience dirty like that, I would go ahead and just watch another event that happened this past week. AEW Dark from 8/24/22 as Nikki Victory faced off against the ranked number 4 from the Jericho Appreciation Society. Holy crap. The Jericho Appreciation Society, ranked number 4, Anna Jade. Now, here's the thing that I've criticized AEW about before. The fact is that Nikki Victory, whatever they show her win-loss record, it's 0 wins, 1 loss. That's great. I'm glad that she's not making her AEW debut like the last time that we looked at AEW, their Dark event. Because I was noticing last time that we looked at AEW's Dark events that they were the AEW debut, and guess what, guys? I'm making my AEW debut. Guess what, guys? He's gonna lose because he's making his debut off of someone who's been here for like a year. You know, they would put people who had been in the company in AEW for like a year against this guy. Hey, he's just making his debut. Just go ahead and squash him. That doesn't exactly give them a good reputation, you know. And here with Nikki Victory versus Anna Jade, like, had it been up to me, I would go, like, later on we have a Serena Deeb versus Megan Myers, or Mayers. I don't know what her name is exactly, but this one right here, like, I would take Nikki out of this match, and then I would put Anna Jade against someone who's actually like the ranked number 3. If Anna Jade is ranked number 4, then it would only make sense for, if this is like going to be on YouTube or whatever, for her to face off against whoever's ranked number 3 for the number 3 ranking, and whoever loses moves. Like, if Anna Jade loses where she's ranked number 4, she would move down, but then the ranked number 3 might have an opportunity to move up. I'm not sure who the ranked number 3 is right now, so I do apologize for not having that information readily available. But this match was honestly 30, 32, 35 seconds long. I mean, they made it extremely obvious who's going to win, and it definitely isn't Nikki Victory. Anna Jade picks up the victory, and she does it in short fashion. I don't see how she's ranked number 4 if she's been doing nothing but wrestling jobbers. But then after that, we get something that I thought was extremely funny. We get a commercial from DraftKings. Do you know why that's funny? It's because DraftKings used to work for like WWE, because DraftKings had this promo code set up for WWE. If you can guess how any of the women in tonight's match or tonight's main event is going to lose or win their championships or retain their championships, then you could win your share of up to $10,000. And then I was sitting there scratching my head whenever I was seeing this DraftKings commercial, as Excalibur said, "And now, a word from our sponsor." And then it goes to DraftKings. And then I was like, okay. You know, I'm not sure how sponsors work on television. Do they pay for the ad spot, or does someone? It would make sense. It would make sense for them to pay for the spot, the ad time, if you will, to pay the network or something. But I feel like somewhere along the lines, AEW said, "Hey, how about we slip you some money? Because otherwise, or how about we make it cheaper, for you guys to televise on here versus what WWE is trying to make you guys pay." I don't know. I feel like that they stole the DraftKings from WWE. It's not important, I guess. Ortiz and Ruby Soho versus two people who are making their AEW debuts. Well, actually only one. Yeah. Well, they're making their mixed tag team wrestling debut. Ortiz and Ruby Soho versus Queen Amatia and Mickey Midas. And I think he's making his debut for the first time. And I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. The first match, I don't know if I said it or not, but I gave it 1 out of 5 stars. It was just 30 seconds, wasn't that long, and then they just cut to the next one. Ortiz and Ruby Soho really took charge here, and it really showed that that's what they were going for, because whenever they come back from their small little commercial break from DraftKings, letting you know that you can win your share of $10,000, Queen Amatia, and Mickey Midas were already in the ring, whereas though that Ruby Soho and Ortiz got a little bit of, entrance music. They got some pyro, maybe. They got a little bit of, hey, and making their way to the ring because they're not already in the ring. That's how you know who's going to lose, practically, because the loser, they wouldn't waste time, resources, and money in giving them entrance music. They're just going to get squashed. So I gave Ortiz and Ruby Soho versus Queen and Mickey Midas 2 out of 5 stars. Dante Martin versus Jackson Drake. This one, even though Jackson Drake is making his AEW debut, which I feel like that they could have just put Martin up against someone who was maybe a little bit already had a reputation in AEW. Maybe someone who would have given him a high profile match, or at least a somewhat debatable, better performance. And I say debatable because Jackson Drake gave a good performance. That's why I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. This match is almost like every time that you, like this one, like I said, the first one was 30 seconds. That was it. Probably 30 seconds. That's all that they got. The next one was maybe 2 minutes. The next one after that was maybe 5 minutes. The next one after that was maybe around 7.5 minutes. Like they kept giving them more and more time, but only as the card went down. The entire event itself was 47 minutes. And Jackson Drake put on what I feel is there were times where he almost had Dante Martin. Or he felt like that he almost had Dante Martin. He came close ever so often. But as you can tell, Dante Martin got the entrance music, and he got to come out, and whenever the announcer announced his name, or as though that after he announced Dante Martin's name, he looked over at his opponent and said, "Already in the ring, Jackson Drake." The next match that they allowed us to see was Serena Deeb, and I was glad to see that she was back, but she didn't have a ranking, which is a little bit surprising because for the last time that I looked at her, she was ranked number 5, which means that she's not in the top 5. Versus Megan Myers. And I really wish that Megan would have put up more of a fight rather than looking like a crash test dummy for Serena Deeb to just work all over. Serena Deeb is honestly one of the best female professional wrestlers you can ever come across, and it shows in her work and how she carries herself. Also this week we saw, I'm not sure if they were still in Charleston whenever this happened, but also this week we saw CM Punk face off against Jon Moxley, which last week I talked about a little bit. And Jon Moxley had some very choice words to say to Mr. CM Punk. I gave this Serena Deeb versus Megan Myers match 3 out of 5 stars. Was honestly, I feel like I would have given it, I should have given it rather 2.5 out of 5. Serena Deeb's performance alone garners 3 stars though. And if Megan Myers would have maybe showed some sort of fight, or maybe if she would have screamed at Serena Deeb or poked her eye, or like I'm not sure how else to say it. If she would have put on some sort of a performance, it probably would have been a higher rating. Okay, now here comes the shit show right here. John Silver, number 10, and Alex Reynolds versus Demon Solveria, Alexander Apollo, and RC Dupree. Now, all throughout this match, the commentary is just going crazy, asking, because there's a guy who's back there. His name's Danny, and Danny is at the commentator's desk for some reason. I think he's trying to help. I think he's trying to help our good friend Xavier call a color commentators match, but for whatever reason, he keeps asking which one of these three is Dupree, and that wasn't supposed to rhyme, but I guess that it did. He keeps asking, okay, is that Dupree? Every time someone gets tagged in, is that Dupree? Is that Dupree? Judging by, I could tell who Dupree was already because of the card. The way that they had the card set up was that every person, it was kind of like their name was beside of their body. On their Titantron, oh man, how do I say this? There's like a screen effect that they show, and then it shows half of the screen is white, half of the screen is black, and where the white and the black meet is the V for versus, and then they have like all of the wrestlers almost like lined up in a line, and then one line on the white side, one line on the black side, and then you can just see, like, you know, like if you've watched AEW Dark or had the pleasure of watching an AEW event, then you'll know that the wrestlers line up with their names almost like over their face. And I don't know what Danny here is trying to pull, but he's talking about, and I do apologize, I don't know Danny's last name. I don't know who all is in the Jericho Appreciation Society. I call myself a wrestling fan, and you guys can be like, well, how can you not know who's in there? You know, you're supposed to be a podcast. You're supposed to be someone who's relatively educated, you know. But the fact is that I don't watch AEW on a weekly basis. I wish that I could. I really do. It looks like a really good show. But nonetheless, the Jobber team puts up, I won't say a fight, but they do put on a performance. And it's a performance that's the Dark Order can respect. John Silver's about my size. I'm just going to come out and say it. 3 out of 5 stars for the Dark Order facing off against this mismatched team of almost nobodies. And it continues throughout the night. Danny, he continues to ridicule people and say, is that Dupree? Is that Dupree? Is that Dupree? Or is that Dupree? And I swear, he just doesn't stop. Next, we get a match that I was looking forward to, and it was something that sort of lived up to the hype. Like, as you can see, every match gets longer and longer and longer. You know, 5 minutes here, you know, we'll give them 6.5 minutes, you know. As Julia Hart faces off against, making her AEW debut, Haley Shadows. But as they're talking about it, they're just sitting down, commentaries, talking about it a little bit, you know. Julia Hart seems to have this, what they called a change in attitude since drinking Malachi Black's potion. Or since having the mist spit in her face. Well, I missed that episode, but let's just go with it. Since she's had this stuff spit in her face, and since she's drank Malachi Black's potion, Julia Hart's become a whole nother person, and it really goes to show the evolution of Julia Hart versus this jobber, Haley Shadows. And they were talking about her name, for her namesake, Haley Shadows, how she should join the House of Black because of, a badass name like Haley Shadows. Julia Hart puts on a banger of a performance here, and this is what I'm talking about whenever I'm talking about women's wrestling. And Haley Shadows gives her some fight back too, unlike the Serena Deeb Megan Myers match, or Myers. I really don't know what her name is. Julia Hart versus Haley Shadows, though, I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. It was honestly a decent, halfway decent match. As we go to Andrea Garcia and Logan James versus Tony Nese and Josh Woods. Now, I don't know who Josh Woods is. The Premier Athlete Tony Nese I'm a little bit familiar with. And these two right here, Logan James and Andrea Garcia, I'm not really sure who he is either, and I do apologize if I got his name wrong. 2 out of 5 stars. That's all that I can say. It wasn't very entertaining. It wasn't very, there wasn't too much meat on the bones, not too much to talk about. So, for that reason, I'm going to go to the next page. The last 2 matches before we get to our show that we were actually going to look at. But I didn't want to stretch time by, if there's only 4 matches or 5 matches on a wrestling pay-per-view, I didn't want to have to stretch time by over-elongating, talking about, almost like talking about the match, and then talking about the match, and then talking about the match, and then talking about the match, and not having that much to talk about, or for that matter, repeating myself like I just did. But I didn't repeat myself to fill time. I did it to exaggerate a point. Death Triangle faces off against Rosia. Holy crap, why can't he just have a regular name? Man Scout and Dean Alexandri. You know what? Just forget it. Okay. And this would have been a much better match. Death Triangle puts on a hell of a performance every time that I see them. Pac, Rey Fenix, and Penta. And even after the match, there was a celebration inside the ring. And for whatever reason, they brought this little boy in. It was his birthday. Apparently, he was holding up a sign that said it was my birthday. Losing my voice. Sorry about that. It's his birthday, and what they decided to do was go ahead and take him out of the crowd and get him in the ring, and he stood on the shoulders of one of Death Triangle's members. I'm not sure which one, because they only showed it for like a second, and I didn't get to see really. I didn't really get to see all that much, because then the screen graphic came on, and after that they said, now it's time for our main event, as Sky Blue takes on Hishira. I'm not familiar with any of their Japanese roster. Hishira Akita, I think her name is, and Emi Emi Ukura and Mac. Holy crap. Two ladies take on two more ladies. Let's just leave it at that. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm not trying to butcher their names. And for that matter, Makitoh. And even though it was hard to keep up with, especially with that interesting names that I had to keep up with, I've seen some of these ladies in action before, and it wasn't stale by any means necessary. It wasn't stale, and there was a lot of, pow, 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 back and forth and left and right and up and down. And, Japanese wrestling tends to be like that. High flying, high octane action. And for that reason, I gave it 3 out of 5. 3.5, almost 4 stars. 3.5 out of 5 stars. It took up the last 10 minutes, but it was possibly the second most entertaining match of the entire night, even though it kind of got the highest average rating. Julia Hart and Hayley Shadows was possibly the most entertaining match of the night, because right before Julia ends up ending the match, she looks straight at the camera and she says, "The house always wins." And then she puts Hayley Shadows in this devastating, almost like a version of the Rings of Saturn, but she modified it in one way or another. Now it's time to look at the NXT TakeOver event. NXT TakeOver Toronto 2019, NXT TakeOver 26. As we look at Angelo Dawkins and Montez Ford, our NXT Tag Team Champions, facing off against 2/4 of a group known as Undisputed Era. Sorry, I had to think about their name. I don't know why. Usually I already know their name. Kyle O'Reilly and Bobby Fish. Now, there's a problem here with Mauro. He calls a rock bottom a Uranagi when Montez Ford does it to, I think, Fish. And you cannot get a Uranagi confused with a manhandle slam or a rock bottom. We get a passionate crowd, and the champions retain with a huge frog splash. And the funny part is that they end up saying something along the lines of that Undisputed Era promised us that they were all going to leave draped in gold on this night, which wasn't true at all. But 3.5 out of 5 stars. Was a pretty good match. I noticed that there was a lot of high flying, really balls to the wall action, and it was hard to keep up with at times. At times, it wasn't. I feel like it went on too long at times, but at the same time, it was like, what can you do? It's a tag team match, you know? Because those tend to drag on for some time. There was no build with this match. whereas though that the next match that we're going to talk about, there was some build to, and there was a hype package for Io Shirai versus Candice LeRae. Now, see, the story here is that Io feels as though that she's been held back. She's been held down, and now she doesn't need any friends. She had three opportunities rather, for the NXT Women's Championship, and she failed them all. But through everything, she had one friend, one person who would always look at her and say, it's okay, you'll get her next time, it's okay. Or, for that matter, have her back whenever someone else interfered in her wrestling match. That one person that Io Shirai had was Candice LeRae. At this time, Candice and Io were the best of friends. So I wrote down on my notes that it was a beautiful contest, that they were the best of friends turned bitter enemies, when Io had enough pity, and I put that in air quotes, from Candice LeRae. Even though LeRae had tried to do nothing but help her through everything, trying to even the odds against everyone of the heel team. It was a decent storytelling, and the heel team, in case you were wondering, is the Horsewomen, which, to me, I'm not really sure that they can call themselves the Horsewomen, because back whenever I watched NXT, the 4 Horsewomen were Bayley, Sasha Banks, Charlotte Flair, and Becky Lynch. And to me, those were the 4 Horsewomen. I'm not really sure. This was in 2019. If I remember correctly, the Women's Revolution was in 2017, 2016. So, there's no way that they can call themselves the Horsewomen. Now, I could be out of the loop in something, but in the highlights that they showed, that did not look like Bayley, Sasha Banks, Becky Lynch, or Charlotte Flair. So I'm not sure how they can have 2 heel groups. One heel group that's known exclusively as the Horsewomen, and one group known exclusively as the 4 Horsewomen. Doesn't really, like, you're splitting hairs at this point. But nonetheless, they showed a beautiful cage match where Candice LeRae was practically, when Io lost her third opportunity, thanks to interference from the Horsewomen, as I stated, it was in a cage match, and Candice came out, and she was like trying to comfort her friend Io, and whenever she did, Io Shirai just snapped, and she just bent Candice's back over a steel chair, and in the hype package it says something like, I don't need friends, and I don't need Candice LeRae. And this was a beautiful contest. LeRae gets almost put through an announce table. So Io Shirai hits this move called a Spanish Fly. If you've never seen a Spanish Fly, it is one of the most underrated, underappreciated wrestling moves. Like, you don't see it unless it's like, you don't see it in everyday wrestling. That's all that I'm going to say. It's like, you go to the top rope, she hit an avalanche Spanish Fly, and it made the crowd start chanting, Mamma Mia. Oh my God, like, Candice takes a Spanish Fly from the top rope, a moonsault, but still kicks out at 2. Mamma Mia chants start. And for this to be the second match, in this entire event. I was just like, holy crap, what did I just witness? What did I just watch? There was no... I wanted to watch it again. Let's put it that way. That's why I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. And that's just beautiful. Not only was it beautiful storytelling on the part of Io Shirai and Candice LeRae, I feel like they hang out a lot, you know? But also, it was beautiful storytelling for whoever put this match together. Long-term wise, I mean, you know, the whole thing in the cage, you know, she's in the cage, and then she just snapped, and she had had enough. The North American Championship, I gotta stop talking about it. The North American Championship, as the Velveteen Dream, the champion, faces off against Roddy Strong and Pete Dunne. So, for those of you who are unaware at this time, Roddy Strong and Pete Dunne have a history together because they were in the NXT semifinals, I think it was, with the Undisputed Era. And it was Roddy Strong and Pete Dunne facing off against the Undisputed Era. I couldn't tell you which two it was from the Undisputed Era, but weeks before that happened, Adam Cole had come up to Roddy Strong, and then he had basically asked him if he'd like to join the Undisputed Era. I'm guessing he foresaw this coming. He foresaw that Roddy Strong and Pete Dunne were going to make it that far. And he said that he would decline. And, of course, Adam Cole told him that he was making a huge mistake, because you're either with us or you're against us. And they made it to the semifinals. Pete Dunne and Roddy Strong, it looks like, are about to beat the Undisputed Era, and almost instantly Pete Dunne snaps and turns on his best friend. Or I just shouldn't say best friend, because they were like barely tag team partners before this, but turns on his supposed tag team partner. And whenever he does, he joins the Undisputed Era after the Undisputed Era pin and win the Dusty Classic and the NXT Tag Team Championships. But nonetheless, with that amount of story that they had, this dynamic going into it with Pete Dunne and Roddy Strong, and for a championship that's held by the Velveteen Dream, but the Dream does nothing for this match, really. He's just there to hold the title. We even get a double stronghold spot, which I thought was pretty creative on the part of Roddy Strong to put them both into the... And the stronghold, honestly, just looks like Chris Jericho's old move, the Lion Tamer. But, you know, I mean, I'm just splitting hairs at this point, I guess. I give it 3.5 out of 5 stars. It wasn't nearly as good as Io Shirai versus Candice LeRae. Oh my god, I feel like I'm going to take this review, this 5 out of 5 review, I'm going to go ahead, rip it out of this notebook and hang it on my wall, because that's such a good match. I'm not going to do that, but, you know, if I had a copier, then I might, you know, do something with it. The NXT Women's Championship, and this was almost as good as Io Shirai and Candice LeRae. You want to talk about women's wrestling? From Julia Hart and Hayley Shadows to Io Shirai rather, and Candice LeRae, Shayna Baszler versus Mia Yim, and Mia's painted as the underdog, even from the get-go. Whenever they start the promo packages so that they could tell you, hey, here's where all the women, all the men were in their careers before this match began or whatever. Here's the story that we were telling. I'm so glad that they do that. The one thing that they didn't do that on was Angelo Dawkins and Montez Ford, the Street Profits, facing off against Kyle O'Reilly and Bobby Fish of the Undisputed Era. That's the one place that they didn't do that. They just started the match, and I was like, okay, sure. It's a little bit of context would be nice, but I guess we'll never get that. Nonetheless, as Shayna Baszler faces off against Mia Yim, Mia's painted as the underdog, growing up on hard times, trying to make a name for herself in the Mae Young Classic, which she made it to the semifinals, if I remember correctly, of one of the Mae Young Classic tournaments that they had, which is an all-women's tournament that they used to hold. I'm not sure whether or not they still do it to this day. Nonetheless, the champion retained, but Shayna Baszler had to overcome a lot of obstacles. Mia Yim was not afraid of her. And I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It wasn't too bad of a contest. I mean, I won't say that it was decent, because it was more than just decent, putting decent in air quotes. It was not so good at storytelling, just so much as wrestling, stuff of that nature. And Mia Yim kept cheating. She kept pulling the hair. She kept poking the eye. She kept grabbing the nose, fish hooks. She just kept doing all these underhanded tactics, but the referee, you're blind, ref, because the referee would be looking at Shayna and not Mia. And every time that the referee would look at Shayna would get her eye poked out, or her back raked, or Mia would use the ropes as leverage. Referee needs a pair of glasses. And now we come to our main event. So maybe this podcast will end shorter. Usually I try to go for a whole hour, so I do apologize if this is shorter than an hour. Let me take a drink of water for 1 second. Before we get to the main event, let me take a drink of water. As Johnny Gargano and Adam Cole face off in the second ever between these two 2 out of 3 falls match. And like I said, this contest, this whole event, has 2 5 out of 5 stars that I will be rating this evening. And Johnny Gargano, otherwise known as Johnny Wrestling, facing off against our NXT champion, Adam Cole, baby. The first fall was chosen by Adam Cole. He won the coin toss backstage. That he got to choose one fall, and he got to choose whether or not it was the first fall or the second fall. And he chose the first. Johnny got to pick the second fall, and if there was a tiebreaker, William Regal, General Manager William Regal got to pick the third fall if there had to be a tiebreaker. And yes, there had to be a tiebreaker. So the first fall that we get to was a pure wrestling match, a normal wrestling match. That's what Adam Cole wanted. That's what Adam Cole got. And Cole said that it benefits him to have a one-on-one exhibition with Johnny Gargano. You know, Adam, if I was you, Cole, I would have second guessed that. You know, because you would figure, as they pointed out in commentary, that a normal wrestling match would actually benefit Johnny more than it would benefit you. Not to take anything away from your wrestling ability or anything of that nature, but I wouldn't feel confident stepping into a wrestling ring with a man who calls himself Johnny Wrestling. I mean, Johnny Wrestling's about to become Johnny Champion, is what Mauro Ronaldo said on commentary. And I thought that one was really clever. Really clever. The first fall, though, as I stated, was a normal wrestling match. They talk about Shawn Michaels. Oh, okay. Dick kick. Disrespect. Okay, so the referee got distracted for 1 minute because Adam Cole brought in a steel chair. It looked like that Cole was about to get frustrated, but the referee admonished him and told him, stop. If you do that, I'm going to disqualify you. And then he took the chair away from Adam Cole, and whenever he took the chair away from Cole, he was about to throw the chair out of the ring. The referee's view is obstructed. Keep that in mind. There's like a wall between the referee and what Johnny and Adam are doing, and Cole ends up kicking Gargano right in his unmentionables, causing him to fall to the floor, and then afterwards he hits him with a devastating super kick, trying to pick up the win. Johnny kicks out, and whenever he does, he sees this as an opportunity. He sees this as okay, I see what kind of game you're playing here, Cole. And then Johnny grabs the chair. And, of course, the referee admonishes him and tells him, if you hit him with the chair, I'm going to disqualify you. Now, in most 2 out of 3 falls matches that I've seen in the past, I've noticed something that didn't happen in this one in particular. Usually there's a rest period where the referee will have you go to your corner and then have the opponent go to their corner, and then there will be like a 30-second, and then they ring the bell, and then you would start fall number 2. In this one, as I stated before, the second fall got to be chosen by Johnny Wrestling, Johnny Gargano. And whenever Gargano got to pick the second fall, he said in the hype package before the match, he chose a street fight. Because he knows that if he can't out-wrestle Cole, then he will beat him. He's like... But the funny part about the end of the first fall wasn't the fact that the referee sent them to their corners, and because, like I said, that didn't happen. The funny part about the start of the second round, or the second fall, was the fact that Johnny had a chair in his hand, and Adam Cole realized right there that he was in trouble because Johnny's got a weapon. They're about to start the street fight segment, which Johnny won, by the way. So now we're tied 1-1 because Johnny got disqualified on fall 1, and the second fall Johnny ended up beating... Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Johnny ended up beating Adam Cole in the street fight. The first fall went to Adam Cole because Johnny got disqualified. Fall number 3 is a cage match. What resembles what I've seen before. There's a SummerSlam event. I can't exactly recall what year it is, but if you was to look up Lions Den's match with Steve Blackman and Ken Shamrock, you're bound to find it. A Lions Den's match was a cage that had weapons surrounding it. This was almost like that, except it had barbed wire. I don't know what William Regal was thinking, putting barbed wire above, because I've only seen, in one instance, have I ever seen a barbed wire steel cage, and that was whenever JBL was champion, and Teddy Long almost like didn't want him to be champion. He was like, well, you better sober up, player. 'Cause he comes into Teddy Long's office, right? I'm sorry. It's probably not relevant. He comes into Teddy Long's office, and then he's like drinking the champagne, and he's like pouring it all over himself, and then he's saying, I can't help it, Teddy. It's a celebration. I'm drunk. And he's like, well, you better sober up, player. Teddy Long, holler, holler, holler. And then he said, because next week, at No Way Out, you will be facing the Big Show. And it will be for the WWE Championship. And it will be in a barbed wire steel cage match. But anyway, this match had barbed wire around it. It had a fire extinguisher. They had thumbtacks. Well, there were no thumbtacks really there, but you know, like JBL on commentary, back whenever matches like this used to occur on a regular basis. Ow. Son of a bitch. Back whenever matches used to happen on a regular occurrence of this nature, he used to say the only thing that limits you is your imagination, and he's right, because Johnny got really, really creative. He was like putting a table over here and then like trying to put Adam Cole on it so that he could jump off of it, and he was like, he even took he found some bolt cutters or some wire cutters of some sort, and he went to the top of the cage and he pulled off a piece of the barbed wire, and he was about to, I guess, slit Adam Cole a new smile, but instead of that happening, Cole ends up throwing him and Johnny off of the platform that they were on that cage, and sending them both careening into the tables below, and those tables just broke in half. These people were chanting, holy shit, holy shit, holy shit. And they kept chanting, fight forever, which obviously they can't do, but you know, whenever you see two people like this who have so much chemistry together and have so much drive and so much passion, and it's a beautiful, beautiful contest that you'll never have the pleasure of seeing again. But according to them, it was their second ever 2 out of 3 falls match, and I haven't even seen the first one, and I can tell you that this one was amazing to a T. 5 out of 5 stars. It deserves the ranking that it gets. I know, I can't hand out 5 out of 5 stars like they're going out of style. Otherwise, I lose credibility. You know, people would come to me for an easy rating. They'll be like, hey, do you care to watch my match and rate it? Watch this. He's going to be so impressed by me. You know, like, I can't just keep doing that. And especially here, where I just gave a 5 out of 5. Candice LeRae, the woman that we were just talking about earlier, Io Shirai and Candice LeRae, I just gave that one 5 out of 5 stars. So, I mean, I gave Shayna Baszler and Mia Yim 4 out of 5 stars. So, why Why would I give this one 5 out of 5 stars? Because it deserves it. Everything from the storytelling to the cage spot to the even the slapstick comedy that Johnny does at the first fall, whenever he practically gets himself disqualified just to start the second fall and start beating the hell out of Adam Cole. Thank you all, ladies and gentlemen, for joining me. I suppose that's all that I have to talk about this week, aside from the whole CM Punk Jon Moxley situation, which I briefly mentioned before I got into the Serena Deeb match. But I guess I could possibly give a hot take on that. And if I had to give a hot take, it would be the fact that Jon Moxley proved his point. That CM Punk, I'm guessing, here's Jon Moxley's point. CM Punk really can't call himself the best in the world unless he can back it up. Unless he can back it up in one way or another, and especially to back it up on a consistent basis. And the hardest person working right now in professional wrestling is honestly Jon Moxley. He's the guy that's putting bread on the table and getting wrestling critics and wrestling fans alike to talk. And not only to talk, but to talk loudly, if that. Jon Moxley's not going to fall off the horse anytime soon. And it seems to me that he's made his point be known very clear. But to all of you out there who seem to think that CM Punk is, for whatever reason, going to, quote, take his ball and go home because he can't be number one, it would be in his best interest to maybe not do that. I'm pretty sure he knows that if he wasn't to do that, and if he was to wait 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks, that he would maybe possibly get another shot at Jon Moxley. Or for that matter, maybe they could run the whole thing that they're doing with Pac and Kip Sabian right now, where CM Punk keeps following Jon Moxley to all of his events and stuff like that, and he just keeps maybe just lingering around the ring whenever Jon Moxley has a wrestling match, or interfering after the match, not during, but after the match, to maybe beat the hell out of Jon Moxley, get Moxley's attention somehow. You know, the words that Jon Moxley chose to say, I don't 100% agree with. You know, best in the world, my ass. And then goes on to say that there's nobody better than me. There's nobody that can touch me. Then there's nobody that can stand in my way. Because he's not going to let them stand in his way. Of course, he is Jon Moxley. He did earn to say everything that he said, and it was practically nothing more than a 4.5 minute squash. Jon Moxley maybe did one move to CM Punk to put him down, and I mean, if you call yourself the best in the world, then you better wrestle like the best in the world. And we've seen better performances. We've seen better performances from CM Punk. That's how I feel, at least. But I'm not salty about it. I'm not mad. And I don't want to see Punk leave again. And if he was, which I would highly doubt that he will, if he was to go back to WWE, I feel like he's not going to do that just because things aren't working out the way that he planned in AEW. It would kind of be a step back to go back to WWE and then be like, hey guys, remember me? I spent practically 2.5 years, talking bad about this company. And here I am again. If he's digging his hole, he wouldn't want to join WWE because he's already been there. He's already done that. The same people who watch AEW are going to watch WWE. There is no loyal fan base. They're gonna see him either way. He might get more people because, and only because, according to some folks, WWE gets more views than AEW. Thank you all so much for joining me here on this episode of the Gut Wrench Podcast. I don't know what episode number it is. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say 48. Because it's either 47, 48, or 49. Should we do something special for 50? Halfway to 100? Had that been the case, why didn't we do something special for 25? Because that's a quarter of the way to 100. Thank you all so much for joining me. Mocha out. That's a wrap.